Again, thank you for allowing me to come out here and talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is about practicing what now referred to as life care planning, in an elder law practice. But first, let me tell you a little bit about maybe who I am and why I'm here. I've been practicing elder law for about 1991. That's when I joined the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. I learned about elder law, didn't know anything about it until I read an article, probably in 90 or 91, in one of the newsletters that lawyers get from time to time. We all know. Back then, they published them all in print. We didn't see, there was no email in 1991. And one of those publications was talking about hot practice areas in the 90s, and identified one of those areas as elder law. And that's really how it got me started when I joined the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. And I thought, this looks like a great area of practice. I have an opportunity to work with older clients and assisting them with their legal needs and so on. And so since then, I have been doing, I guess I should say now, I'm in my 25th year of elder law practice. So thank you, David, for your kind remarks about my resume. But the reason I believe that I'm here is not so much my resume, but often what I say is it's because of who works for me, not because of who I am necessarily. I have another partner now. Barbara McGinnis joined my office, joined me in 2011 and became a partner in my firm this year. And prior to her coming to work for me, she was, and actually she still is, a geriatric nurse practitioner. Of course, she does not do that type of work now, but she joined my firm after 20 years doing nursing, and she's been a director of nursing in care facilities in the Nashville area. Over the course of the last, 17 years, I believe, I have had 3 registered nurses working in my practice, a licensed master social worker. I've had 2 long-term care ombudsmen, district long-term care ombudsmen, working as elder care coordinators. And I have had 1 LMFT. Does anybody know what an LMFT is? That is a licensed marriage and family therapist. And actually, Emily McCord is here, one of my, who is the LMFT. When she came on board, I kept thinking that must be some sort of transgender thing. But that's when, but Emily, swiftly corrected me, about what an LMFT is. But she actually came to the firm in 2012 and was working in hospice. And then last year, she and her husband were transferred back to Georgia. But actually, Emily is here this morning that will be participating in our discussion about life care planning practice, at lunchtime. All right, let's see. This was me when I joined NALA in 1991, the traditional role of an elder law attorney. Actually, not so much. When I joined NALA in 1991, how many of you, by the way, are members of NALA, the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys? I see several of you are. When I joined in 1991, I really was not sure about what the practice of elder law was. Elder law at that time was new. NALA had been formed I believe in 1987 or 1988, by a group of practitioners who somehow found each other, I believe mostly because they came out of the public interest, the nonprofit law firm sector. Many of them did anyway, and formed an organization that was intended to promote the needs and handle the legal matters of older people. And when I got into NAELA, and I wasn't really sure what it was all about, and I realized after I had joined been a member for 2 or 3 years, that much of what elder law attorneys did was Medicaid planning, asset protection planning, also known as Medicaid planning. And this slide, as you can see, basically describes what traditional elder law attorneys do, or at least this is the culture, I guess I should say, that I grew up in, as an elder law attorney. The families would come into us. Usually, or almost always, they came into us because their loved one, their elder, was in a crisis. Typically, I would not actually see the elder himself or herself, but family members would come in. They would bring in information about their loved one's estate, their money and their property. I would review any existing estate planning documents and determine what we needed to move forward in a representation that primarily consisted of how do we make sure that this individual's money was not all expended, on nursing home care, so that instead the cost of that care would be shifted to the state Medicaid program. And so we would develop a plan that entailed, often it entailed a transfer of the elder's resources to family members. Sometimes that would result in a period of Medicaid eligibility, sometimes in other things that we would do. Later, we would apply for Medicaid when the individual we believed was eligible. The person was approved for Medicaid, and then we would, after having done all of that and essentially impoverished the client, we would close the file. That was and is traditional elder law. And to my knowledge, it's perhaps how elder law is primarily practiced today. Any reason to believe that that's not, David?
I'm not fairly traditional, so I'm not sure.
But what you may know about the practice of...
That's probably what I hear around the water cooler, though.
Right. And what I found after I had done this for a while, and our clients and our families seemed to appreciate, the work that I was doing, but I started to become frustrated because I didn't feel as I was really addressing all of their needs. I would have family members or spouses maybe that would come into me and they would say, well, my father is, he's in a skilled nursing facility right now, and the therapist and the physician is saying that they're doing this therapy or doing that therapy. Well, what does that mean? What can we expect for him? My spouses would come in and the wife would say, well, how can I take care of my husband at home? I really don't want him to go to a nursing home. What are my options? Or there would be a loved one in a care facility, and there would be questions about, well, what if he was, can daddy come home? What support services are available to us, either in the community, or at home, so that we can take care of him at home as long as possible. And so what I realized is that I was not able to answer those questions, and the answers that I would usually give would either try to help them to the extent that I could, based upon my limited knowledge about those subjects, because I really didn't really want to give them the answer which probably, would maybe the correct or the best answer I could give, which was, I don't know the answers to those questions, but I can help you save the money from the nursing home. And I recall, even now after probably almost 20 years, very vividly, that I had a family member that came into my office, and her loved one, I believe it was her mother, was in an assisted living facility, and I started talking about long-term care and about how to qualify for Medicaid in the nursing home. And the person left and the person, she said, well, we really want to take care of mama at home or at assisted living. And I realized after that she had left, I said, thought to myself, I would not have hired myself either, because I didn't really have anything to offer them. So I started to do some study, and I realized that what was happening out there was that as I started looking more and more into what was going on in the aging community, what was going on with demographics, that I'm looking at this slide because it's supposed to have one of those neat little pop-outs it's not happening. The slideshow animation. I'm going to try to see if there is a laser here, but hopefully, can you all see this? The issue here really is who needs to plan for a nursing home stay and who needs to plan for chronic illness care. When I started practicing elder law in the 1990s, I can tell you that for those of you who are around at that time, and I don't know how many were practicing elder law as long as maybe I have, there was a palpable sense back in the 90s that if you were an old person, you were going to wind up in a nursing home. Because what it appeared to us as elder law attorneys back in the 90s is that there was going to be a continuing flow of old people that were going to go into nursing homes, because we knew what the demographics were, we knew that our population was aging, we knew that there was this age wave that was coming through, and the end result was going to be is that there was going to be prosperity for everybody, particularly those of us who were practicing elder law. And so the expectation is that whereas in the middle of the 1990s, 1995, 1996, for those of you who can see this slide, and I guess you can see it from either one of these graphics here, these monitors, is that right in the middle of the 90s, that about 1996, at any one time, there were 1.4 million residents that were Medicaid funded in nursing facilities in the United States. In 1975, there were a little over 1 million of those. In 2010, that number has fallen to about where it was in 1975. I have shown this slide and shown this to many elder law attorneys over the course of the years, and I've asked people. I'll do like a little quiz, and I'll say, well, how many there were in 1995? There were 1.4 million persons in nursing homes at any one time. How many do you think there are in, say, 2010? And I would have people say, well, there's probably 2.5 million or 3 million. But when you actually show them the numbers, what we realize, and those of you who work regularly in this area know, is that our older population is healthier and wealthier than it ever has been. And this population is not going into nursing homes. That number, and this graphic this graph shows, that number is actually declining. But what is instead happening is that the number of individuals, number of older people who need chronic illness care, that number is actually rising. And for a long time, I've sort of struggled with this sort of the paradox of that. It's like, okay, our population, our older population, chronic illness care or chronic illnesses are increasing, in our older population, yet the numbers of our older population that are actually going into nursing home is declining. So how does that work? I mean, wouldn't you think that as our chronic illness would increase in older people, that they would actually wind up in nursing homes? The thing that we're seeing now, and this is a study is epidemiology, and the epidemiologists who are studying this phenomena are finding that as our population ages, although our chronic illness care, our chronic illnesses are increasing, the acuity of those chronic illnesses is actually shrinking in time at the end of life. So what that means is that although our older population is tending to becoming chronically ill for a longer period of time, the actual level of significant decline is shortening to a period of time that is typically measured, whereas once it was in years at end of life, it's now shrinking into months. And so the end result is that what we are seeing now in our older population is maybe a longer length of chronic illness, but with a lower acuity level. And furthermore, we're seeing a population that is otherwise healthier and wealthier and has other options short of needing extended care in nursing facilities. And so when I started thinking about and studying this, I realized that what our clients and our families were coming to us, these were the questions that they were presenting in our office. Actually, they're referred to on this slide as the 5 core problematic areas about decisions that elders and their caregivers need to make. And I actually drew the information from this slide from an article in the British Medical Journal of 2010. The article, which you can find online, I believe it's called Planning for Non-Dementia Care, decisions that caregivers need to make for persons of diminished capacity or something like that. And so essentially what this slide means is that when our clients and our families walk into our office, they have going on in their heads a number of different worries, as I'll call them. These are things that they worry about. They come into our office, and maybe they come into your office, and they have a bunch of different things going on in their heads, of which the first one is how and when to access help. The caregiver walks into your office, and they're worried about, okay, at what point do I need to get more help at home for my loved one? Or maybe it's the individual himself or herself, but primarily it's the caregivers that are walking into our office, and they're having these questions about how and when to access help. Another question that they have that really is worrying them is considering residential care placement. At what point do we have to decide that I can't take care of my father at home anymore, or I can't take care of my husband, so what do I do now? What are my options? How do my preferences come into play here? They have things like guilt that's going on in their heads. They worry about whether facilities are accessible to them. They worry about what is the right facility. Is it going to provide the level of care that my loved one needs? And obviously they're concerned about cost. They also come in, of course, with worries about legal matters. Are there powers of attorney in place? Do they have appropriate decision making? They worry about whether they're going to be able to manage the finances. Obviously they're worried about how they're going to pay for care. And believe it or not, they worry about driving. How many of you have clients or family members that come into you and they talk to you about their loved ones driving? Yeah, we all do. Sometimes the way we put it in my office is that we want to ask our families to call us when their loved one goes out on the road, so we can stay home. We have people that walk into our office and they say, "Well, Daddy can drive." I had a consultation like that yesterday, where the daughter comes in and she's asking questions about care needs and whatnot, and she was talking about her daddy's driving, and she says, like many of them do, well, he can drive to the grocery store, right? He knows his way to the grocery store, until he leaves. I guess he would leave Dalton, and then take the wrong turn and wind up in Atlanta, right? So they have worries about, our caregivers have worries about those sorts of things. They worry about non-dementia care. Many of our clients present to us and they have cognitive impairment, dementias, Alzheimer's disease, and whatnot. But our families also worry about the appropriateness of non-dementia care. Usually, it's very seldom do our older clients present where they have nothing going wrong with them physically or mentally, other than a dementia. There's almost always comorbidities, and so our caregivers have questions about, well, what if Daddy gets pneumonia? He's got Alzheimer's disease. What kind of care should we provide for him? Should we do palliative care, or should we treat him aggressively? They have questions about that, and they also have questions and worries about what's their backup plan. Caregivers walk into our office, and this is usually spouses. Our spouses walk into our office, and they talk about their, well, my husband is this, and my husband is that, and I'm worried about taking care of him. And when we have those conversations with them, invariably the question has to come up is that, well, what happens if something happens to you? What if you can't continue? And those are worries that our clients and our caregivers have. And so when I chose in our office to become what I call an elder-centered law practice, then we started to see ourselves as what our role was going to be as an elder-centered law practice. And when I say elder-centered, what I mean by that is that, I realized that when I was what I refer to as an asset-focused elder law attorney, where I was focused on how do we make sure that all the money doesn't go to the nursing home, but shifting out of that role into how can I make sure that our clients get the care that they need? Then we started to think about how did we fit in as an elder-centered law practice on making sure that the elder's needs were met, that the elder was the center of our practice rather than the elder's money. We saw ourselves then as representing the patient in the healthcare and the long-term care system. If you stop to think about it, the latest figures that I believe that I saw is that our in the United States gross domestic product, I think the latest figure is 19% now is devoted to healthcare and healthcare spending. But if you think about it is that who represents the patient in the healthcare system? Do we have, what area of law practice represents the patient in the healthcare system? Does anybody think of, is there I know we have, if you are if you're a nursing facility or a hospital, they have big law firms in downtown Georgia, in downtown Atlanta. Who do they represent? They represent the hospitals, the nursing facilities. But nobody, of course, there are plaintiffs' attorneys that represent after there's been an injury, but there is nobody that represents there is no legal discipline where the patient is represented. So we found that the patient in the healthcare system needs representation. And in order to do that, we had to develop a multidisciplinary approach to practice in this area. And so what we found as an elder-centered law practice, that we would provide education, we would provide advice, support, ongoing care assessment for our clients, coordination and monitoring, liaison and intercession with the healthcare community, intervention and advocacy, and also access to sources for payment of healthcare and long-term care services and supports. And then finally, sometimes I've been told or say, well, it sounds like what a geriatric care manager does, and in many ways it does. But the difference is that we're lawyers, and what do lawyers do? Lawyers hold others accountable for the rights that our clients have in the healthcare and the long-term care system. And that's what makes us different. That's what makes us different from a financial planner, a non-lawyer Medicaid planner, a geriatric care management firm. It makes us different usually from traditional elder law attorneys who typically are not focused in that area. All right. And so when we became an elder-centered law practice, we developed a method of practice that I call life care planning. I didn't really start it out as life care planning. First of all, I thought about it as a disability plan. I think I may have had other terms for it, and I came up with a term called life care planning. And when I came up with that term, it was probably in the mid to late 90s, and I didn't know that all the special needs planners had what we're called, and PI lawyers had life care plans. And I'm going to talk about, sort of the resemblances and the differences, in just a moment. But we call it life care planning, and we have particular goals in life care planning. Primarily, we focus on life needs first. We focus on quality of life and care, appropriate surrogate decision-making. As you probably can imagine, most of our older clients come to us with deficits. They have loss of functional capacity. They have, many of them have loss of cognitive they have cognitive impairment, a loss of cognitive capacity, and therefore we find that it's necessary to have appropriate surrogate decision-making. Certainly we're concerned about getting care, financing care, what public benefits and resources are available to our client, and ultimately it's about finding, getting, and paying for good care. So, the components of a life care plan, they are not documents. A life care plan is not a document. It's not a document, it's not a transaction. We like to think of it as a method or a process for meeting client needs over time and as their circumstances change. And we'll look at that a little later when we start talking about the elder care continuum. So the attorney and the elder care coordinator, the ECC, as we've referred to that individual in our office. ECCs in your office, David? What do you?
We don't use that term.
You use care coordinators? You use something else?
We have coordinators.
Coordinators. Okay. So we've used the term elder care coordinator, and I know, as David says, in his office, I believe they use the term coordinator. We've had firms that use the term life care coordinator or life care coach or something along those lines. But the point is that as a component of a life care plan, that the attorney and the ECC will meet with the client and the family, and what we are trying to do here is to tease out the goals, the worries and the goals that our clients and our families have. Are they worried about, say, non-dementia care? Are they worried about residential placement? Things like driving, all of those worries that I showed you on that other slide. We gather information about healthcare needs. For instance, our workbook is what we call it. Some of you may call it an intake sheet. We send it out to the client, the person that's calling us and having concerns about my husband or whatever. And we will send out a workbook, and on the second page of our workbook, we will ask tell us about your medical problems, what drugs that you're taking, when have you last been into the hospital. We need to find out what our clients' healthcare needs are. We look at what resources are available to our client. And when we think about resources, we are all-encompassing there when we're having these meetings. We're not just talking about money or property or income. We're also looking at what services and supports are currently in place for our client. Are there caregivers? Are there family members? What is out there that is supporting our client? We're going to look at the current estate plan. We're also, needless to say, going to consider client and family preferences. Although we are focused on making sure that our clients are getting the care that they need, at the same time, we are also mindful of the fact that our clients have preferences about where they would like to receive care. And we need to know what those preferences are, and we also need to make sure that we are educating our clients and families about those options, and frankly about whether maybe their preferences for care are realistic. I'm sure many of you have had clients and family members that come in and say, well, we would like to make sure that we can take care of daddy at home for as long as possible. And we have to sometimes we point out to them is that, well, if you have $10,000 a month to pay for care, then you can get what you want. But even then, maybe receiving care at home is not the best option for the older person. And so we have discussions about that. And we also look at what resources, either public or private, that are or could be available or accessible to our client. We will also look at establishing surrogate decision makers if they're not already in place. Maybe we will embark on a process like, as Christian mentioned, looking at who are the appropriate surrogate decision makers. Are there children? Are children available? Are they the best decision makers? And so on. We're looking at doing legal work, such as creating special needs trust or other trusts that may be appropriate. And we'll begin assembling our care team and meet to develop what we refer to as a holistic plan for our client. And so over time, as we are continuing working with this client and this family to meet their needs, we will monitor their continuing eligibility for benefits, and on the resources that are available and could be available to support our client's journey along the continuum, and we will be making adjustments as needed to the plan as and when needed. All right, so what is what we call an elder care coordinator? What's the role of an elder care coordinator? The elder care coordinator, as he or she begins working with the client and the family, initially will conduct an assessment. What we'd like to do is we want to do that assessment, in wherever the client is living. Often the client is living at home. Sometimes the client is living in a care facility. And so the elder care coordinator will actually go visit the client in his or her home environment. And there are a lot of reasons that we want to do that. And as we, when we are having a discussion at lunch about life care planning, Emily is here, and she will, and I'm sure David's coordinators can talk more about what the role of an elder care coordinator is and what an elder care coordinator does. But our elder care coordinator, in addition to doing that assessment, she will gather information about our clients' health care and their current physical and psychosocial needs. She will also investigate care options and see what is available in the community where the client resides or where the client's preferences are. The elder care coordinator is expected and will have a significant experience in knowing what resources are available in our client's community. And so our approach, these are essentially our fundamental concepts of our approach. First is to find, get, and pay for good care. I can tell you that these approaches that we use, these also make up what we include in our engagement agreement with our clients. As probably many of you, when you have an engagement agreement with your clients, you list the objectives and the scope of the representation. So when we address the objectives of the representation, in our engagement agreement, we will essentially list them pretty much in this order, in this priority. First is to find, get, and pay for good care, for our older client. We like to think of is that is the highest goal, of our engagement, and all of our agreements indicate that essentially indicate that this goal is essentially subservient to the other goals. And so this is how we reach agreement with our clients as to what the objectives of the representation are, which is primarily to find, get, and pay for good care. Second, facilitate care decisions that our clients and families have. Third is to assist them in managing their resources, and how we can marshal those resources to provide and access the care that our client needs. Fourth is to access whatever benefits, public and private, that are available to our client. And fifth and last is to protect wealth, and certainly protecting wealth for the elder. And second is that if there is any surplus, then the surplus, that would be a goal for the client. Our clients do present to our office with concerns about leaving an inheritance for their family members. And that is an important goal, that almost all of our clients have. And so in this way, in our engagement agreements, we acknowledge that is an important goal for them. But the goal of asset protection for heirs is not the primary goal of the representation. It may wind up being an ancillary benefit of it, but it is not the primary goal of our representation. So our method here, in brief, and sometimes when I'm asked to to give a short version of what I do for a living, I might say something like, well, our job as an elder-centered law practice or as a life care planning law firm is we want to find out where our client is on the elder care continuum and work with our clients to find, get, and pay for the care that they need. That's my 25 or 30-second elevator speech. But if I only had maybe 5 or 10 seconds in the elevator, then my speech more goes something like this. My job is to help you take care of your mother. And sometimes I say is that I have the best job in the world because I get up every day and I get to do that. All right, so let's look at our fundamental principles. I have 10 minutes, 15 minutes, right? 13 minutes, great. We apply these principles, these fundamental principles, these principles guide our planning. And the first principle is that the care of an older person can be planned. That sounds trivial. It sounds maybe trite. But you would be surprised, perhaps, if how many of your clients and family members walk into your office and believe or somehow sense that there really isn't much that you can do, and that all you can do is react to events. But we have found and we believe that the care of an older person can be planned. Second is that care planning takes place across 3 domains. And those domains are the legal domain, the financial domain, and the personal care domain. Third principle is that care must be elder-centered. Care must, and by elder-centered, we mean that it encompasses all of the issues and all of the concerns, that the elder client has. And it is, and the care, and the care that we apply to the client is applied in the best interest, and for the benefit of the older client. And the fourth principle, our fundamental planning goal is to find, get, and pay for good care, which you have a principle that you have already seen. And the fifth principle is that care is a resource that must be applied along a continuum as and when needed. All right, and so let's illustrate each of these principles, or at least all right, take care of an older person can be planned. You're going to see that going forward. These are the 3 care planning domains, the legal, financial, and personal care domains. All right, and here they are, in a little bit more detail. And as you can see, the legal domain consists of things like estate planning, decision-making, public benefits work, advice and counseling, advocacy, on legal matters and whatnot. The financial domain consists of things like tax issues, retirement, asset preservation, wealth management, risk management, liquidity, all of those sorts of things that we think about when we think about the financial planning. And the personal domain, access to care, quality of care, cost of care, services and supports. So, who needs to plan? All right, we think of, or we like to divide the world up of our older clients between hops and unhops. All right, a hop would be what? Healthy older person, right? And an unhop is a unhealthy older person. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we tell them that they're hops or unhops. Although, actually, if you tell an unhop that he or she's an unhop, she's probably going to say, yeah, I am. I am an unhop. But we think about this as if you are a hop or an unhop, we want to find out first when people come into our office is, are you a hop or an unhop? If you're a hop, you are a healthy older person. And if you're a healthy older person, the planning domains, the domains that we are planning in are the legal and the financial. Our healthy older people don't need to be planning other than maybe to be educated, about the personal care domain. But our healthy older people are planning, we're planning for them in the legal and financial domains. But it's our unhealthy older people, our unhops, where we're planning in all three domains of the legal, financial, and personal care needs. And I think probably any of us in this room who have developed a significant chronic illness, at some point in their lives recognizes that, I think about the clients who develop diabetes, in older ages. That becomes very significant in their lives, and it's something that they may never have thought about before. Thank you. So, in the planning along the three planning domains, the three care domains, we use a term, or we use a metaphor or a way of looking at the world that we call the elder care continuum. The elder care continuum looks something like this. If you are over here on the far left, you are a hop. You are a healthy older person, and you have essentially no loss of function. You're doing fine. And think about this, like this line here, this vertical line is, I refer to it on this slide, as the Great Divide. The Great Divide, say maybe here, healthy older person over here, unhealthy older person over here. The unhealthy older person is the older person who starting to lose function. And so we have a line here that we call the functional limitations line. So if you're over here on the far left, you have no loss of function. And if you're over here on the far right, then those people over there, they don't function very well at all. But it's these people here, that we are looking at planning for, between when they become unhops to over here to death. Those are the focus of our life care planning law firms. And our focus then becomes figuring out where they are on the elder care continuum. You like that? I think you did that, didn't you? I think, yeah, David made that. What our clients want and what they think they're going to get when they're hops, what do they think they're going to have? What's life going to look like for them and maybe for us? We're going to go right from here to over here. I mean, that's what we would all like to see happen, but the fact is that's not what usually happens to older people. So they start losing the ability to function either mentally or physically, and so that decline in function then may result in a loss of independence or dependence, result in a healthcare crisis, a long-term care crisis, a financial crisis, and certainly a caregiver crisis could occur to them. All right, so our second line here is what we call the meeting needs and levels of care line. And think about this line, this second line, as essentially where care and how care takes place. A lot of care, most care for older people takes place at home. So our client may be over here, just across the line here, and living at home with assistance. And maybe they're doing adult day services. Maybe in the future, outside of the traditional home place, independent living, assisted living, memory care, nursing facility, and so forth. And so often what happens is that our clients and our families present to us, and they tell us a story about, one of my, not my favorite, not favorites, not really, that's not the good term, but you have family members that come into you and say that it was a good day for mom because it was a good week for mom because she only fell 3 times last week. You know, that sort of thing, or only fell once or twice, you know, in the past month. And so so they will present and they will have questions about, say, how do we make sure that we keep mom out of the nursing home, when actually what they're telling us is that they're trying to take care of mom at home, and the care that they are trying to provide to her is insufficient to stem her movement further along the continuum. And so we will identify for them and say, well, this is the problem that you have today. This is your current problem. Your problem is not that all of mom's money is going to go to the nursing home. Your problem is that because the level of care that she needs due to her functional limitations and her losses outstrip the ability of her caregivers to take care of her, then she is in a danger zone. And the longer period of time that is unaddressed, you know, where that gap is not made up, the more likely what's going to happen. She's going to move further along the continuum more quickly, you know, and they will get exactly what they fear, which she will wind up in a nursing facility. So we often see this. And so we then identify to them, okay, we have the functional limitations line up here. Okay, where are you living? What resources, what does the cost of care mean for you? Adult day services, maybe whatever that is. Independent living, assisted living, $4,000 or $5,000 a month, maybe. Memory care, 5 to 6. Nursing home, 8 to 9. Resources and public benefits, you know, what's available to them. You know, and then finally, if we put it all together, you know, this is what the elder care continuum looks like, you know, in one slide. And what I like to say is that if you understand the elder care continuum, you will devote the rest of your career to figuring out how to make it work for your clients. Thank you.
A couple minutes for questions. We're going to have a facilitated discussion during lunch, but if you got questions, you actually had 5 more minutes, I believe. I cut you off short. Does anyone have questions?
Any questions?
Well, I'll make an observation. I know there is a non-elder law attorney in this room that was confronting a client exactly about one of those slides, the danger zone slide. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, this is not an issue that's limited to elder law attorneys. We all face this as we're counseling families who are trying to find their way through the elder care continuum. How many of you do practice elder law? How many of you get questions from clients that get to the issues that Tim's talking about? You know, not just, you know, how do I protect money, but how do I make life work? Mm-hmm. You know,
Yeah.
Protecting money doesn't really do us any good if we haven't protected someone's quality of life.
Yeah, and the idea here is that, I mean, this is just sort of a brief introduction about, you know, what life care planning is, and it's a method and a process. And what I learned is that, like David, you know, he's been doing this for quite a while himself. Is what I found is that I could not do this myself, and that I needed to have non-lawyer healthcare professionals, you know, in my office who do this kind of work and know this stuff. You know, because Kristen pointed out, you know, in her talk that, you know, we're not credentialed for this as lawyers. I know a lot of lawyers that will come to our programs that we do, and they will tell us that, you know, I try to provide this service. I give a lot of this information out to our clients and our families. And one of the things that I learned many, many years ago is that the questions that our clients and our families have about how are we going to take care of mom, those are the most important questions that they have. In the world of elder law that I grew up in is that those were ancillary questions. The sense of the traditional elder law attorney is that these family members were coming into us and they were worried about the money. And yeah, they were worried about the money going to the nursing home, but only after doing this for a while did I realize that, yeah, they were worried about mom. Now, why didn't they have, when they came into your office or my office back then, why didn't we have conversations about that? Because they didn't think a lawyer was interested. And so, so if the lawyer didn't have those conversations, why would they be interested in? So, because as far as they were concerned, well, you got your estate planning documents over here, you got your Medicaid plan over here, you got your financial thing over there, you got your healthcare thing over there. That's the fragmented and disjointed system that confronted and still confronts them. And so that was our innovation, was putting that together for our clients so that we could have a team where that we could meet their legal, financial, and personal care needs, and guide them through the elder care continuum.